Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. It is Reverend Dr. Katie, and I am here with you to talk a little bit about fear today. That ugly word, but it's really not an ugly word. And we're going to talk about ways to recognize and acknowledge fear in our life, but also not let fear determine our whole lives, our whole paths and lives. There's healthy fear, right? Like there's a snake right in front of me. I have a healthy fear of that snake, but there's also debilitating fear that stops us from moving forward in life, that can really disempower us. And that's the kind of fear that we want to be able to recognize and shift through. And the more we're able to do this, then we can start doing it when the fears are really little, so they don't grow to be gigantic in our lives. And if you're at that place in your life, that's okay. That's where you are. But let me know that so I can help you with shifting that energy and moving through, right? And so if those fears feel overwhelming, reach out right away, because there's immediate tools that you can use in order to be able to address those fears. So we're going to start out actually with just a little mini card reading. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to see you joining us. A little mini card reading to kind of set the tone for this. And these are very simple little angel cards that I have. You can just see they're small little cards. They all have a single word and a little picture on them. I'm just going to kind of draw one for us. Okay. Oh, I love this. So this one says healing. All right. So I love this because what speaks to me is that acknowledging our fears, addressing them, moving through them is healing. That jumpstarts our healing process. And so if you are in need of healing at any part of your life, physical, emotional, spiritual, then addressing and dealing with your fears is absolutely one way to begin. All right, so if you have any questions, go ahead and post those. I will be happy to answer them. Hello, everyone. It's really great to see everyone here. And I will just kind of check into the chat box from time to time. All right, so let's talk about this now. When we experience fear and we just let it sit there, that becomes a kind of energy that can really start to live in our bodies and in our souls and in our spirits in all kinds of unique and sometimes really sneaky ways. And when fear becomes inhibiting, it can keep our worlds kind of small and kind of boxed in. At least that's how I feel whenever I am fearful, and when the fear just stays there and sits for a long time. It's not reasonable to say that we're never going to be scared or afraid, right? We're human beings, we're here on earth, we live human lives. And part of that is that, yeah, we have natural fears. I think every human has a natural sort of fear of falling. That's something that we're born with. That's a healthy fear, right? That keeps me way, way away from sharp edges that I don't really want to be near. And that's a big one actually for me, right? I still travel and go up towers, and I'm a little cautious about how I do that, right? That's not inhibiting for me at this moment in my life. But we all have natural fears like that. But I think the fears we're really talking about today are those fears that keep us from moving forward in life. Do you know what a huge message in the Bible is? It's be not afraid. When an angel appeared to Mary, the angel said, be not afraid. When Jesus appears to the disciples, or when the angels appear to the disciples after Jesus' resurrection, they say, don't be scared. When Jesus is walking on water, when Jesus is appearing at the transfiguration with Elijah and Moses, right? That's a core message, which is be not afraid. The prophets say it, angels say it, Jesus says it. And sometimes in the Bible, it can actually be kind of funny because there's clearly an overwhelming situation, like an angel, host of angels appearing to people, and they're like, yeah, don't be afraid. I'm sure those humans were a little shocked and a little bit in awe and a little fearful, right? But that's a core message that I think God has for us, is that our natural state is not one of fear, but one of courage, right? So we know that we're not called to act out of fear, but we are called to act out of hope and courage. Because we act out of hope and courage, that doesn't mean that the fear magically just snaps away. It means that we don't let it dictate us. We don't let it dictate our actions. We don't let it dictate the rest of our lives. And this also doesn't mean that we act rashly or just completely blindly. but instead that we use our courage and our hope to match our head, our hearts, and our intuition. And so I meet a lot of people, and I used to be one, and maybe from time to time I still am, who make decisions only from places of fear and anxiety about what could happen that would be really, really bad. So we catastrophize. If that's you, let me know. Many of us have a tendency to catastrophize and imagine the worst of the worst of the worst, and then convince ourselves that that's exactly what's going to happen. And we don't imagine what would be really amazing or really good about stepping forth in courage and in hope. So living into any kind of new calling, and chances are you are listening to this because you are experiencing or have experienced some kind of calling in your life. All Christians have a calling, and you might be exploring what that is for you right now. Living into a new calling is always a little scary. It always is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fun, right? Because part of it being scary is that we don't exactly know what's going to happen or how it's going to unfold or what people will think about us, right? And that is a little bit scary. But if we let that fear overwhelm us, we'll never move forward, and we'll never serve the people in the world in the ways that we're called to serve. So it's really important that we feel a little bit of that fear, because that can actually propel us forward. So I'm going to say that again. Feeling a little bit of that fear and anxiety can actually make us say, oh, this is actually important to me. And then we do move forward. We take that first step. We become courageous. And we become propelled by that energy, right? Especially when we don't want to let that energy rule our lives. So when you are making decisions from fear, especially when it's stopping you from doing something really, really cool in your life, I bet that the emotion that you feel is sadness, right? When we don't engage the things we want to do, and we don't move forward in the calling that we're discerning, that we think we might be called to, then we do feel very sad. So if you have that overwhelming or even underwhelming feeling of kind of sadness deep in your core, and you think that might be related to fearfulness or anxiety or not moving forward in your life the way you want to because you're scared of doing that, then let me ask you to pay really close attention to that, because that might mean that all of these things are interplaying at once, and it's time to make a change for you. And so again, the point of fear is not for us to overcome it, but we want to overcome the effects of fear. I'm going to say that one more time. We're not necessarily trying to overcome fear, because there might be a healthy degree of fear that is with us, and that's okay. What we want to overcome are the effects of fear. So what are the effects of fear? One, emotional sadness, like we mentioned before. When we have that sadness, that fear runs our lives, and not hope, not courage, not kind of faithfully taking steps to meet our calling, to establish goals, to establish a vision for our lives and what we're called to do. You might feel stuck. So if fear is running the show in your own life, you might feel stuck. You might feel stuck spiritually or emotionally or even physically. You kind of have that feeling of like being stuck in quicksand where you can't quite take a step forward. And that's happening because fear is running throughout your body, throughout your emotional body, throughout your physical body. And that's what you're feeling predominantly, and it's overwhelming your hope and it's overwhelming your courage, but they're still there. They're still there. And there's steps you can take to get back to those, to get to the core of who you are, which is not someone who is fearful, but someone who is courageous and does take those steps. Another sign that you might be stuck in fear is you might start wondering, what if? What if I had done this a week ago or a month ago or a year ago or 5 years ago? Or what if I do this in the future? What if I go ahead and start doing this in the future? I'm going to actually tell a story. I read this probably 25 years ago when I was a teenager. I read this amazing story about a woman, and this is like a Reader's Digest story, I think, about a woman who always wanted to be a dancer. She loved dance. And so when she was a teenager, said she wanted to dance, and everyone told her, oh, you're way too old. You have to start serious dancing when you're a child. Your limbs can't adjust now. Okay. She got to college, wanted to take dance, and they said, no, you had to have started this much earlier in her life. She said, oh, I tried to start when I was a teenager, but they told me it was too late. They're like, no, it wouldn't have been too late when you were a teenager, but it's too late now. Then she's in her late 20s, and again, she wants to dance. No, you couldn't possibly start dancing now. Well, I was told when I was a teenager and in college, I couldn't dance then. Oh no, if you had started then, you'd be fine now. You'd actually be pretty advanced. You could be a professional dancer, right? And so finally, I think when she was in her 40s or 50s, she's like, darn it, I'm a dancer. She didn't let that fear or anyone else's judgment about what she could or couldn't be in her life stop her from being a dancer. I don't know if she was a professional or dancer or not. Didn't matter. She was a dancer. She no longer let fear or other people's opinions stand in her way of being a dancer. So I want to know, what's the dancer inside of you and how is it going to get out? So another sign that you might be feeling fearful is you might get stuck financially or emotionally and stop growing in any of those areas, because fear is an energy like anything else. And when that rules our lives, we can get stuck in all kinds of ways. So if that rings a bell for you and you're like, oh, maybe those things are related, then yeah, it's time to start shifting that energy so that you can experience growth in all areas of your life. And then we might get to a point in our life where we're at the end of a season or even at the end of our lives. And then, we're looking back over our shoulders like that and we're having regrets. And that's definitely not the place that I want you to be in your life. I want you to get to the end of season or the end of life and say, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I stepped out in fear and maybe I made some mistakes. Maybe I didn't, but look at all the amazing things that I got to experience. And I had hope and I had courage and I influenced people. And I know we're all here to do that. You're in this group because you're called to do that at some level in your life, which is just totally amazing. So what I'm really curious about is how many of you have either not pursued metaphysics out of fear, and some of that may be healthy fear, but you're letting that run your life and you're not exploring the deeply healing parts of your life that you could because of that fear or that anxiety. And I'm curious how many of you who are very astute at practicing metaphysics don't explore your Christian life out of fear of being hurt again, because you were hurt by a church, you grew up maybe in a totalitarian kind of church, but you haven't given up on Jesus and you haven't given up on God, but you're not pursuing your Christian life to the fullest of its ability because of that fear, right? Those are two flip sides of the same coin. And we have to be able to integrate all of that in order to live the fullest life that we're called to live. You're in this group for a reason. You're in this group because you love Jesus and you are really interested in metaphysical practices. Okay, so how do we deal with fear? One, we acknowledge it, right? We acknowledge it, we name it, that it's there, and that we don't want it to have power over us in the same way that it has in the past. And then second, we need to tap into our intuition, and we need to see if we're having a genuine, like, warning, this path isn't for you, or if we're not pursuing something because we're afraid of it. If it's the second, then we need to shift through that fear. Third, I would recommend, of course, metaphysical tools to help shift that energy. Many people use chakra clearing, many people use tapping, many people use stones. Those are all wonderful tools. They are tools. They are nothing more than tools, but they are tools that can help us identify some of that work and make the energy shifts that we need to make so that we can recycle that fear into hope and into courage. And then you're ready to take the leap, right? If you're not sure how to do any of those steps, let me know, because that's what I'm here for, to help enable you to be able to take the steps that you need to take in your own life. So that's my recommendations on how to deal with fear in your own life. So I'm seeing if we have any questions. Okay, yeah, I see a good one here, that financial fear might be paralyzing you. Yes, that's a huge one, right? Because a lot of our self-identity gets wrapped up into finances, and a lot of our self-worth gets wrapped up into finances. And then when that happens and we're fearful and we're not sure what's next, then we're paralyzed from making another step, right? Or investing in ourselves in any kind of meaningful way. And so that's a huge one. Abundance it's a big topic around here, right? And like even just saying that word could be really paralyzing for some people, right? And really fearful. We get fearful of even talking about abundance because we feel like that makes us bad Christians, right? And so I see it every day. I've experienced it too. I've done my own shifts and work in that area, so we'll be sharing more about abundance, in the next couple of weeks as well. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that's not easy to say. So you've done the first step of acknowledging that, and you're just going to start to deal with that energetically in your own life. And yes, private message me, because I'm looking forward to that with you. All right, I don't see any other big questions right now. It's really great to see all of you. I would love to hear more about what may be inhibiting you and the steps you're willing to take to be courageous and hopeful in your own Christian metaphysical life. I will talk to you soon. Bye.